First contact and confusion. Admiral James Sullivan stared out the viewport of Terran Space Command's primary conference room, watching distant stars twinkle against the vast darkness of space. The meeting request from the Helix Confederation had caught everyone off guard. No one expected a species of crystalline beings, who had been fighting a war for 3 centuries, to suddenly seek humanity's help. "You wish us to, what exactly?" Sullivan asked, turning to face Ambassador Prisma, whose translucent form shifted through various shades of blue and violet. "We require humanity's assistance in our conflict with the Spiral Dominion." Prisma's harmonic voice resonated through the room. "Our war has reached its 297th cycle, and our analysis suggests your species possesses unique qualities that could prove decisive." Sullivan exchanged glances with his second-in-command, Commander Wei, who was doing her best to maintain a professional expression. The idea that humanity, barely a century into interstellar travel, could solve a war that predated the Industrial Revolution seemed absurd. "Ambassador," Sullivan began carefully, "you're talking about a conflict that's lasted longer than the United States has existed. What makes you think we can help?" Prisma's crystalline structure pulsed with what Sullivan had learned to recognize as enthusiasm. "We have observed your species' approach to problem-solving. It is unprecedented in our experience." "Unprecedented?" Wei couldn't help but interject. "That's diplomatic speak for completely chaotic, isn't it?" The ambassador's form flickered briefly. "Your tactical approaches defy all established principles of warfare. Your strategies violate every known convention of battle geometry. Your solutions are innovative beyond comprehension." Sullivan leaned back in his chair, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Ambassador, are you saying you want us because we don't play by the rules? Your species turned a mining vessel into a tactical weapon by using its gravity tethers as a makeshift slingshot," Prisma stated, their tone a mixture of horror and admiration. "You defeated a pirate fleet by having your ships perform what you called a synchronized swimming routine in space. Traditional combat doctrine has no defense against such creativity." The admiral's smile widened as he remembered that particular incident. Lieutenant Harrison had gotten the idea while watching old Earth sports videos. The pirates' targeting computers had crashed trying to predict movement patterns that, as Harrison put it, had more in common with interpretive dance than warfare. "Show me your current battle tactics," Sullivan requested, activating the holographic display in the center of the room. "Let's see what we're working with." The display filled with perfect geometric formations, ships arranged in precise patterns, moving with mathematical precision. Every maneuver was calculated to maintain optimal firing solutions and defensive positions. It was beautiful, elegant, and completely predictable. "Well, there's your problem," Sullivan muttered, watching the crystalline ships move in their perfect patterns. "You're fighting like it's a chess match. We humans? We're more likely to flip the board and use the pieces as improvised projectiles." Prisma's form rippled with what might have been confusion. "But the sacred battle geometries have guided warfare for millennia. All civilized species understand their fundamental importance." Sullivan stood up, walking around the holographic display. "Commander Wei, remember that time Lieutenant Harrison won a battle by having her squadron perform the Macarena?" Wei chuckled. "The enemy targeting systems had a complete meltdown trying to predict the pattern. They were convinced it had to be some kind of advanced evasive maneuver. Your lieutenant deliberately had her ships perform an ancient Earth dance ritual during combat?" Prisma's voice reached a harmonic frequency that suggested deep distress. "Ambassador," Sullivan said, his expression growing serious, "I think it's time we showed you how humanity fights wars. Commander Wei, get me Lieutenant Harrison and her team. Tell them to bring their unconventional tactics presentation. The one with the pool table demonstrations, sir." "Exactly that one. Ambassador Prisma, I hope you're ready to learn about chaos theory, because you're about to see warfare in a whole new light." As Wei left to make the arrangements, Sullivan watched Prisma's crystalline form pulse with nervous energy. The ambassador was about to learn why humans had gained a reputation for being the galaxy's wild cards. Traditional warfare was about to get a serious shake-up, and Sullivan couldn't wait to see how the galaxy would react to humanity's particular brand of creative problem-solving. The war that had lasted 3 centuries was about to meet its match, not in superior firepower or advanced technology, but in humanity's unique ability to think so far outside the box that they couldn't even see the box anymore. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, the Spiral Dominion had no idea that their perfectly ordered world was about to encounter the beautiful chaos of human innovation. As Sullivan watched Prisma attempt to process the concept of tactical improvisation, he couldn't help but smile. The galaxy was about to learn why humanity's unofficial motto might as well be, if it's stupid but it works, it isn't stupid. The Chaos Theory. Lieutenant Nova Harrison stood in the simulator room of the Terran flagship, Audacity, surrounded by holographic projections of battle formations. Her audience, a mixture of human officers and crystalline helix commanders, watched with varying degrees of comprehension as she dismantled 3 centuries of combat doctrine using a pool cue and interpretive dance moves. The problem with perfect geometric formations, she explained, using the cue to scatter a holographic representation of a helix battle group, is that they're predictable. And predictable means vulnerable. A helix commander named Luminex raised an appendage, their crystalline structure vibrating with distress. But the sacred geometries have guided our warfare for millennia, yes, Harrison interrupted, twirling the pool cue like a baton. And that's exactly why you've been fighting the same war for 300 years. Everyone knows exactly what everyone else is going to do. She gestured to her tactical officer, Lieutenant Rodriguez. Show them the footage from the Arcturus incident. The holographic display shifted to show a recording of a human fleet engaging pirate vessels. Instead of maintaining formation, the human ships moved in seemingly random patterns, weaving and spinning in ways that made the Helix commander's crystalline forms flicker with anxiety. What you're watching, Harrison continued, is what we call tactical jazz. Every ship is improvising within a loose framework, responding to the moment rather than following a preset pattern. But how do you coordinate? Luminex asked, their voice reaching a harmonic frequency that suggested deep confusion. How do you maintain tactical coherence? Harrison grinned. That's the beauty of it, we don't. The enemy can't predict what we're going to do because even we don't know what we're going to do until we do it. She pulled up another simulation, this one showing the famous Dancing Star Gambit, where a human fleet had defeated a superior force by having each ship plot its own random course through the battlefield, creating chaos that enemy targeting systems couldn't handle. Humans have a saying, Harrison explained, in chaos, there is opportunity. We don't try to impose order on the battlefield, we embrace the chaos and use it to our advantage. Admiral Sullivan, watching from the back of the room, couldn't help but smile as Harrison demonstrated what she called tactical parkour, using enemy ships, asteroids, and even weapons fire as impromptu navigation points for unpredictable maneuvers. Lieutenant, a Helix tactical officer named Prism 7 spoke up, our battle computers cannot process these movement patterns. They defy all known laws of tactical engagement. Exactly. Harrison beamed. That's why it works. Your computers are trying to find patterns where there are none. It's like trying to predict where a cat will land after you startle it, you can make an educated guess, but good luck hitting it with a targeting laser. She moved to the center of the room, her enthusiasm infectious. Now, who wants to learn about using gravitational slingshots for what I call the space billiards maneuver? The next few hours were a crash course in human-style warfare that left the Helix commanders simultaneously horrified and fascinated. Harrison demonstrated techniques that violated every principle of their military doctrine, using solar winds like a surfer rides waves, treating asteroid fields like pinball machines, and coordinating fleet movements based on Earth dance choreography. The key, Harrison explained while showing a simulation of ships performing what she called the cosmic cha-cha, is to stop thinking of space combat as a mathematics problem and start thinking of it as an improvisational art form. Admiral Sullivan watched as the Helix commanders struggled to reconcile their rigid tactical doctrine with Harrison's fluid approach to warfare. Some were clearly resistant, their crystalline forms pulsing with skepticism, but others showed signs of what Sullivan had come to recognize as excitement. "Lieutenant," one of the younger Helix officers, Crystal Edge, ventured, "could you explain again how you used a maintenance drone's magnetic grapple to perform what you called a space yeet?" Harrison's face lit up. Finally, someone's asking the right questions. "Rodriguez, pull up the Tau Ceti footage. This is where it gets fun." As Harrison launched into an enthusiastic explanation of how to use maintenance equipment for tactical advantages, Sullivan made a mental note to update the training protocols. The galaxy was about to experience warfare human style, and if the gleam in Harrison's eye was any indication, it was going to be quite a show. "Remember," Harrison concluded, twirling her pool Q1 last time, "the only predictable thing about human tactics is their unpredictability. And that's exactly why they work." The Helix commanders left the briefing room that day with their tactical computers full of simulations that defied analysis and their crystalline minds struggling to process concepts like tactical breakdancing and combat improv. The war that had lasted 3 centuries was about to encounter something it had never seen before: human creativity unleashed. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, Lieutenant Nova Harrison was already planning how to teach a group of crystalline beings the tactical applications of Earth's most chaotic export, its ability to turn any situation into an opportunity for innovation, no matter how unconventional it might seem. Operation Wildcard. Captain Raj Patel stood on the bridge of the TSS Entropy, watching as his crew prepared for what would either be remembered as the most brilliant tactical innovation in galactic history or the most spectacular failure. The fleet of crystalline Helix ships surrounding them pulsed with nervous energy, or at least, that's how Patel interpreted their shifting colors. "Status report," he called out, adjusting his lucky bandana, a habit that had earned him more than a few curious looks from their new alien allies. "All ships report ready, sir," Lieutenant Zhao responded from tactical. "The Helix formations are, well, they're trying their best to be unpredictable." Patel suppressed a smile as he watched the Helix vessels attempt to break from their geometric patterns. The result looked less like controlled chaos and more like a crystal chandelier having an identity crisis. "Remind me again why we're letting the humans lead this operation?" The voice of Commander Crystal Thought echoed through the bridge's comm system, their crystalline form visible on the main view screen. "Because," Patel replied, grinning now, "you've been fighting this war for 3 centuries using perfect geometry. We're going to end it using bar fight physics." The plan, dubbed Operation Wildcard by Harrison's tactical team, was precisely the kind of insanity that had made humanity infamous in galactic military circles. They were going to turn the Spiral Dominion's own rigid tactical doctrine against them, using chaos as a weapon. "Begin Phase 1, Patel ordered. "Execute the Drunken Master protocol." The human ships suddenly broke formation, each vessel beginning to move in seemingly random patterns. To the untrained eye, it looked like the fleet had gone mad. To Patel, it was beautiful. "Sir," Zhao reported, trying to keep the laughter out of her voice, "the Dominion's tactical computers are showing signs of confusion. They're attempting to identify our formation pattern." "Good luck with that," Patel muttered. The pattern was based on recordings of his grandmother's cat chasing a laser pointer. He'd like to see any tactical computer make sense of that. The Dominion fleet, faced with movement patterns that defied analysis, began to shift their perfect geometric formations in an attempt to compensate. It was exactly what Patel had been waiting for. "Phase 2, he commanded. "Launch Operation House Party." Across the fleet, human ships began deploying specialized drones, hundreds of them, each programmed with movement patterns based on different Earth dance styles. Breaking, jazz, swing, even traditional Indian classical dance moves. The battlefield transformed into what looked like the galaxy's most chaotic choreography. "Captain," Crystal Thought's voice carried a note of what might have been panic, "the Dominion's targeting systems are experiencing cascading failures. They can't maintain lock on any of our vessels." "That's because you can't predict the electric slide in zero gravity," Patel responded. "Now, watch this, Phase 3, initialize the wedding reception protocol." The drones suddenly shifted their patterns, creating what appeared to be a massive, three-dimensional version of a traditional Earth line dance. The human ships wove through the formation, using the drones as cover and confusion, while the Helix vessels, those that had managed to adapt to the new style of warfare, followed in their wake. The Dominion fleet's response was exactly what Patel had predicted. They attempted to impose order on the chaos, trying to force the battlefield back into recognizable geometric patterns. It was like trying to organize a cat stampede. "Sir," Zhao called out, "the Dominion's command and control structure is breaking down. Their formations are becoming erratic. They're trying to adapt to our randomness," Patel explained to Crystal Thought. "But they're doing it systematically, which means they're still being predictable. And predictable means vulnerable," the Helix commander finished, their crystalline form pulsing with what might have been understanding. "Execute final phase," Patel ordered. Operation Flash Mob. Every ship in the combined human Helix fleet suddenly began moving in perfect synchronization, not in geometric patterns, but in a complex dance that Patel had based on viral videos from Earth's early Internet age. The Dominion fleet, their tactical computers already struggling with the chaos, found themselves facing something even worse, chaos that suddenly turned into coordinated action from an unexpected direction. The result was spectacular. The Dominion's formations collapsed as their ships tried to respond to threats that moved in ways their tactical doctrine had never conceived possible. Within hours, the battle, and with it, the war, had reached a turning point. As Patel watched the Dominion fleet retreat in disarray, he couldn't help but think about how humanity had changed the face of galactic warfare. Not with superior technology or overwhelming force, but with unpredictability, creativity, and a willingness to turn combat into performance art. "Captain," Crystal Thought's voice was quiet, their form shimmering with what might have been awe, "I believe I owe you an apology. We thought your methods were madness." "The best kind of madness, Commander," Patel replied, adjusting his bandana once more. "The kind that works." As the fleet regrouped, Patel could already hear the tactical officers beginning to analyze what would become known as the dance battle of Sector 7. He had a feeling that galactic military doctrine would never be quite the same again. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, a Dominion tactical officer was probably still trying to figure out how they had been defeated by what appeared to be a cosmic flash mob. The Dance of Disorder. Commander Diana Blackwood sat in the observation lounge of the Galactic Military Academy, watching as her latest class of mixed human and alien cadets attempted to grasp what she called tactical improvisation. The sight of crystalline Helix beings trying to perform what she had dubbed the Chaos Waltz was something she'd never quite get used to. "No, no," she called out as a Helix cadet's ship maintained perfect geometric alignment despite instructions to the contrary. "You're still thinking in straight lines. Remember what we discussed about the butterfly effect?" The cadet's crystalline form flickered with frustration. "Commander, I fail to understand how modeling our flight patterns after Earth insects will improve our combat effectiveness." "That's because you're still trying to understand it," Blackwood replied, pulling up a holographic simulation. "The point is to embrace not understanding. Watch this." The simulation showed footage from what had become known as the Noodle incident, where a human cargo pilot had accidentally discovered a new form of evasive maneuvering while trying to eat ramen during an asteroid field transit. The resulting flight pattern had become standard training for advanced tactical courses. "The pilot wasn't trying to create a new tactical maneuver," Blackwood explained. "They were just trying not to spill their lunch." But because they weren't bound by traditional flight patterns, they discovered something new. The classroom, a mixture of humans and various crystalline species, watched as she pulled up another simulation. This one showed the famous Operation House Party that Captain Patel had used to turn the tide of the war. The key to understanding human tactical doctrine, she continued, is to stop trying to understand it. The moment you think you've got it figured out, you've already failed. A human cadet raised her hand. Is that why last week's combat exercise included a section on improvisational jazz? Exactly. Blackwood beamed. Jazz musicians don't know exactly what notes they're going to play until they play them. They respond to the moment, to each other, to the energy of the performance. That's how we fight. The Helix cadets' crystalline forms pulsed with various colors as they tried to process this concept. One of them, designated Crystal Harmony, raised an appendage. But Commander, how do we coordinate if no one knows what anyone else is going to do? Blackwood's grin widened. Let me show you something we call organized chaos. Computer, initialize training scenario Delta Jazz 9. The holographic display filled with a complex battle simulation. Ships moved in patterns that seemed random at first glance, but slowly revealed subtle connections, like dancers in a massive improvised performance. See how each ship responds to the others? Blackwood pointed out. They're not following a preset pattern, but they're all aware of each other, all part of the same dance. It's like a flock of birds or a school of fish, no central control, but perfect coordination. She watched as understanding began to dawn in her students' expressions, or in the case of the Helix cadets, their color patterns. Today's exercise, she announced, bringing up a new simulation, will be based on something from Earth's history called flash mobs. Computer, show the historical footage. The display showed scenes of seemingly random people in public spaces suddenly breaking into coordinated dance routines. The Helix cadets' forms flickered with what Blackwood had learned to recognize as bewilderment. Your task is to create a tactical maneuver that begins in apparent chaos but transforms into coordinated action at an unexpected moment. And to make it more interesting. She paused for effect, you'll be doing it to Earth music. The next 2 hours were a symphony of controlled chaos as human and alien cadets attempted to merge the precision of military operations with the unpredictability of flash mob choreography. Ships spun and weaved through space in patterns that made traditional tactical computers give up in despair. Remember, Blackwood called out as she watched a Helix cadet finally break free of geometric patterns to execute a perfect spiral maneuver. The goal isn't to be random. The goal is to be unpredictable. There's a difference. By the end of the session, even the most traditional Helix cadets were beginning to grasp the fundamental principle of human combat doctrine. The only predictable thing about it was its unpredictability. As she dismissed the class, Blackwood couldn't help but smile at how far they'd come. The galaxy had expected humans to adapt to traditional military doctrine. Instead, they'd turned military doctrine on its head, introducing concepts that would have been considered absurd just a few years ago. Commander, Crystal Harmony approached after class, their form pulsing with what might have been excitement. I believe I finally understand what Lieutenant Harrison meant by tactical jazz. It's not about chaos, it's about freedom within structure. Exactly, Blackwood nodded. And that's why it works. Because while our enemies are trying to figure out the pattern, we're already changing the music. As she watched her students leave, discussing the possibilities of incorporating various Earth dance styles into combat maneuvers, Blackwood knew that the face of galactic warfare had changed forever. The rigid geometric patterns of the past were giving way to something new, a fusion of order and chaos that only humans could have conceived. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, traditional military theorists were probably still trying to figure out how a species that based combat maneuvers on dance moves had managed to end a 3-century war in just 5 hours. Victory through unpredictability. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council hummed with an energy that made its crystalline walls vibrate in sympathy. Fleet Admiral Sullivan stood at the podium, delivering what would become known as the Chaos Theory Address, the formal presentation of humanity's impact on galactic warfare. In conclusion, Sullivan said, his voice carrying across the assembled representatives of dozens of species, the integration of human tactical doctrine has resulted in the shortest period of sustained peace in recorded galactic history. Not because we're better at fighting, but because we're better at making warfare so unpredictable that nobody wants to risk starting one. The Spiral Dominion's representative, their crystalline form still showing traces of confusion even months after their surrender, raised an appendage. But Admiral, your methods violate every principle of conventional warfare. Exactly, Sullivan smiled. That's why they work. When you fight the way everyone expects, you get a 300-year war. When you fight like every battle is a surprise party, you get peace. The hall erupted in a mixture of harmonic resonances as various crystalline species attempted to process this concept. In the year since Operation Wildcard, the galaxy had struggled to adapt to what one Helix commander had dubbed the human factor, the tendency for human military operations to resemble performance art more than traditional combat. If I may, Commander Blackwood stepped forward, her presentation cue ready. I'd like to share some data from the new Joint Species Training Initiative. The holographic display sprang to life, showing footage from the Galactic Military Academy. Crystalline beings performed complex maneuvers alongside human ships, their formations flowing like liquid geometry. Gone were the rigid patterns of the past, replaced by what looked more like an improvisational dance company performing in zero gravity. As you can see, Blackwood continued, we've successfully integrated elements of human unpredictability with traditional tactical doctrine. The result is something entirely new, a fighting style that combines the best of both approaches. The footage shifted to show what had become known as the quantum tango, a battle maneuver that looked like pure chaos until the exact moment it didn't, transforming into devastating coordinated action from unexpected vectors. Furthermore, Sullivan added, the adoption of what Captain Patel calls tactical jazz has led to a 95% reduction in traditional military confrontations. It turns out that when you can't predict what your opponent might do, you're much more inclined to try diplomacy first. Lieutenant Harrison, now heading the Academy's Advanced Unpredictability Studies department, stepped up to share her latest findings. We've discovered that by introducing elements of human culture, everything from dance to sports to improvisational theater, we've created combat doctrine that's literally impossible to prepare against. The display showed training footage where ships performed maneuvers based on everything from breakdancing to butterfly migration patterns. The Dominion representatives' form flickered with what might have been a headache. But how do you maintain order, they asked, their harmonic resonance suggesting deep confusion. We don't, Harrison grinned. That's the beauty of it. We maintain awareness instead. It's like a really good party. Nobody knows exactly what's going to happen, but everyone's paying attention to everyone else. Sullivan watched as understanding slowly spread through the assembly. The galaxy had expected humanity to adapt to their way of warfare. Instead, humanity had introduced concepts that had transformed military doctrine at its core. The future of galactic peace, Sullivan concluded, doesn't lie in better weapons or stronger shields. It lies in being so unpredictable that warfare becomes pointless. After all, how do you fight an enemy whose battle plans might be based on cat videos one day and interpretive dance the next? As the session ended, Sullivan found himself approached by a young Helix officer, their form pulsing with excited colors. Admiral, is it true that the famous Noodle Incident maneuver was discovered by accident? Most of our best tactics were discovered by accident, Sullivan laughed. That's the secret of human innovation. We don't just think outside the box, we forget the box exists and build something new out of whatever we happen to find lying around. Looking out over the gathering of species that had once been locked in centuries of geometric warfare, Sullivan felt a sense of pride. Humanity hadn't just ended a war, they'd transformed the very nature of conflict in the galaxy. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, a new generation of officers, human and crystalline alike, was learning that the best tactical doctrine might just be having no doctrine at all. The age of predictable warfare was over, replaced by an era where peace was maintained not through force, but through the simple fact that no one could predict what humans might do next. As Sullivan often said, in a galaxy full of chess players, be the cat that walks across the board and knocks all the pieces over. It wasn't conventional wisdom, but then again, nothing about humanity's approach to warfare ever was. And that was exactly why it worked.